Ugly Duckling Oboes is dedicated to the development of young oboe players. They provide quality handmade oboe reeds, private lessons, and high-quality oboe sales, rentals, and consignments. The oboes that they rent are conservatory mechanism oboes that include the left-hand F key and low B flat key. All are maintained by oboe-specific technicians. In-person lessons are available, as well as virtual lessons for students who live outside the geographic area or have transportation and scheduling challenges. They also offer online college audition coaching for high school juniors and seniors who plan to audition to be music majors. Visit uglyducklingoboes.com for more details on how you can set up yourself for success and sign up for their newsletter. That's uglyducklingoboes.com.
Consider buying your processed oboe and bassoon cane from those friendly folks over at Barton Cane. Processed with care and precision for your everyday reed-making needs. Take the pain and injury out of reed-making by letting Barton Cane do the hard, repetitive, boring stuff. Free up time for practicing, happy hours, hikes, baking, and spending time with friends and family. Barton Cane, here for you. Visit www.bartoncane.com.
Hi, I'm Galit Kaunitz.
And I'm Jackie Wilson. And you're listening to Double Reed Dish,
a podcast for oboists,
bassoonists,
and the people who love them.
Hey, Galit.
Hey, Jackie. How are those allergies treating you?
Oh, they're kicking my rear end, I have to admit. It feels like it might be turning into a cold or something like that. But yeah, after this, I actually have an open wide day, so I think I might go take a nap and
Ooh, I love a nap.
Try my best to warrior up. How about you?
That's right. Oh, I'm doing good. It's getting, the train is screaming toward the end of the semester.
Right.
So I'm getting to hear everyone's jury pieces with their piano collaborators, which is really great. Like hearing everyone's work come together.
Mm-hmm.
And recitals are coming up, and we're starting to look toward the end of the tunnel here, which is so great.
It is. It feels like it's going to be a sprint to the finish, at least on my end. But there is a light at the end of this tunnel, which is always good.
So you had a great idea for the dish this week to do a listener mailbag.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that was lovely because I love interacting with all of you beautiful people who listen to us scream cackle into the microphone, however often it is that you do that. So here's a good one. How do you find happiness in music when you feel like you're going nowhere?
Do you have any good thoughts about this?
Not really. Because when you feel like you're going nowhere, I feel like there's no way you can actually be happy about that. So my recommendation for anyone struggling with that is therapy. You got to go work it out with a therapist. It's just such a depressing time of life if you're in that time of life, and our careers are cyclical. So, it comes and goes, and it manifests itself at different times and in different ways. And we have to find a way to work with it. I think I've spent a lot of time in therapy doing that and being okay with where you are right now, even though where you are right now is not necessarily where you want to be. And then how do you take little steps to get there? It's truly so hard.
Yeah, for sure. I think I totally agree with all of that because there are a lot of layers to this, right? It can be like when you feel like you're not progressing as a player, when you feel like you're not progressing maybe in your career or in auditions. I'd love to know if this listener kind of where they're coming from with this, but I think it always helps to, remind ourselves that one, there are ebbs and flows. There are times of feast and there are times of famine, and nothing is permanent. But also we are more than the music we make.
1000%.
I think sometimes as musicians, we make music our identity, or we make, the bassoon or the oboe our identity, and the things we accomplish or achieve on our instruments become really embedded in our sense of self. And that is a knife that can cut both ways if we're not careful. And so I would urge this listener to remember that they are a whole person. In addition to being a double reed player or musician, they are, someone's child or someone's friend or someone's teacher, or a really great video game player, or that they love reading books, or whatever it is. Like, we have to have more to our concept of self than just music. And maybe those other parts of yourself need a little bit of investment if music either isn't giving you back what you're looking for, or if it's just not making you feel good to think about where the state of affairs are musically. Maybe turn that attention elsewhere, and be patient and kind with yourself. Of course, nothing lasts forever. This too shall pass.
Great segue to self-care tips.
Self-care is something I've actually kind of been struggling with a little bit lately. I've wondered if that's what brought on this kind of not feeling my best, because there are times when, there's just stuff on the list, and the dates by which it has to be done are coming fast and furious. And just pragmatically, it kind of is what it is, and there's not a ton of downtime. So I guess my best self-care tip is kind of really being honest with oneself about what has to be done now/today and what can wait. Like, for example, yesterday, I was kind of stressing because I have a performance of a certain group of repertoire on Friday, and then a performance of a certain group of repertoire like 2.5 weeks later. And obviously it all should be getting my attention, but I was like, oh, I feel like I'm kind of trying to do too much all at once. And I looked at the calendar and reminded myself there's like 9 whole days between after my performance on Friday and when I need to have the other stuff ready to go. And it's like, you can turn your attention to the Friday stuff exclusively now. That's perfectly fine. And all of a sudden, I actually said out loud, Jackie, give yourself some grace. And all of a sudden I went, ooh, my repertoire just cut in half. And I didn't feel like I had to practice like 7 hours that day to get through it all. And I'm just going to let those other pieces wait. And Saturday I'll pick them up again, and that's okay. So maybe like being honest with yourself about, what really has to be done now and what you can give yourself a little bit of grace on. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, I'm a huge fan of that strategy. I feel like the longer I'm in a professional role in music, the more I'm like, well, I'll learn that tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. I remember Ben Twelio telling me you never learn music as quickly as when you're a professional. And I just thought he was like, you think you don't have time now when you're a student. Like, when you're a professional, you really don't have time. And I remember just thinking like, oh, sure, you just don't remember what it's like. And it's like, no, you got to learn stuff really quickly.
Yeah. And I have gotten a lot more comfortable trusting that when that performance switch flips on, I can do it, and I can do it without making a mistake. Or at least I can do it without making a really embarrassing mistake. Yeah, I think for me, I have to go to bed at a reasonable time. Like, 11 p.m. is too late for me to.
I've always been that way. Were you ever one of those people in school who would like stay at the music building till 2 a.m. practicing?
Yes.
Really? I never was. But I remember kind of like looking at those people and being like, oh, that's kind of like there's a fun intensity to that, but I've never been that person.
I used to be, and now if it's like 10:30, I'm just like, it is so far past. I can't even live. So, and part of self-care for me also has been in getting control over my self-talk and allowing myself to be more positive. As you know, I am a catastrophizer.
That's your superhero name.
That's right, the catastrophizer. And so, yeah, that's my tendency. Like, I always go to the worst possible scenario first. But like, just recognizing that although it could happen, the chances of that happening are pretty slim. So like acknowledging like, yes, my fear is valid, but also again, trusting that my growth and my preparation and my musicianship can carry me over the threshold.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of related, someone asked us about tips for staying motivated. These are all kind of comparable, but do you have anything that gives you that extra little bit of gas when you feel like your tank is empty?
Well, having concrete things to be practicing for.
Like clear goals.
Clear goals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you're out of school and you're not practicing, maybe schedule a recital at a library or at a church or something that will give you a deadline to be practicing for, or, sign up for an audition, or, if you're teaching privately, put together a studio recital for you and your students that you also have to perform on so that it, gives you something concrete, because it's so easy, but also luxurious to not have that deadline. And just be like, oh, there's no pressure. I don't have to, so I won't.
Right. I'm probably one of the few weirdos. I know not everyone is like this, but I actually really get inspired by my colleagues and other bassoonists. It doesn't actually tickle my competitive bone. Like I watch someone rock out on the bassoon and I'm like, that's so awesome. I want to practice for 10 hours. And so sometimes I'll even just like seek out other bassoonists on the internet. Like Morgan Davison obviously has this great practice Instagram, or the Sophie Dervaux. Oh my gosh. And she's like conducting the orchestra and like playing from the podium.
Have you seen her? What is it? Her new album cover with the bassoon on the stand and she's dangling the baton from her hand.
It's just like, how she can do it all. Like, come on. And that's really inspiring to me. So, yeah, sometimes I look at my peers just rocking out and killing it. And then I'm like, oh yeah, what we do is actually super fun. And maybe I'll go practice now. I don't know.
Okay, so a very special question we got in our call for questions was from one of my students who asked, who is my favorite student? And I'm very happy to disclose that my favorite student is absolutely it has always been, it always will be. Question answered.
That's what I thought you would say. Oh, I think we can end with maybe some like rapid fire. The ones we didn't get to. Do you have any double reed ensembles that you like super love?
Queen of Sheba.
Mark Vallon has a fantastic double reed choir arrangement of themes from Carmen that's really fun.
Oh, nice.
Dream piece you want to steal from another instrument?
Any Brahms clarinet sonatas.
Yeah, I don't actually want to steal this, but my answer is Quartet for the End of Time. Our friend Corey just played Quartet for the End of Time, and I was mourning how I'll never get to play it. But for the record, I'm not advocating it being played on bassoon. I guess I'm just advocating that I should have been a clarinet player. And last, how about a tip for video recording an audition?
Don't mess up.
I would say don't do a whole session and only then check how it looks. Make sure that I did, especially in the height of pandemic when we were doing all these video recordings and it was it felt like such a production. I'd do something and be like, oh, that was a good take, and watch and half my head would be out of the frame or something.
God.
Take the time to make sure your setup is actually right, because if the take is good, or I remember once I had a take and the camera was crooked and so the whole frame was diagonal. It looked like I was sliding down the mountain as I played.
She'll be sliding down the mountain when she slides. Hey, oboists. Have you ever found it difficult to sort out when and how to find a new oboe or English horn? Oboe Chicago streamlines the process, providing personal and professional consultation and a large selection of lovely instruments. The process feels comfortable and thorough. Selection includes F. Fleuret of Paris, Howarth of London, Covey oboes, and Fox products. For a current listing of Oboe Chicago's selection, please visit www.oboechicago.com. For a credit of $100 toward shipping, mention Double Reed Dish when you call or email Shauna.
Chemical City Double Reeds is a full-service double reed shop specializing in the sale of instruments, cane, accessories, and sheet music. Double Reed Dish listeners can enjoy free shipping with code DRDISH, all caps, no spaces. Visit them in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or online at chemicalcityreeds.com. We are delighted to be talking to Sarah Jeffrey, Principal Oboe of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. Welcome to Double Reed Dish.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
We always like to get to know our guests by hearing how they began their journey on their instrument. So tell us the story of how you came to the oboe.
Sure. Well, probably like a lot of other oboe players, I came from a different instrument. So I have a very musical family, and I started on violin and on piano when I was quite young, 3 and 4 years old. And, you know, I love the piano. I still love the piano, and the violin just didn't have my name on it. It was never gonna be me. And I played it for quite a long time until after years of begging my parents to let me quit. My dad, who's a wind ensemble conductor, finally said, you know, you'd be a good oboe player. So if you want to quit the violin, why don't you pick up the oboe? Give it a shot. And so I did. And, you know, it's never easy to start the oboe. It just doesn't sound good, especially after years on another instrument. But, you know, then you're the one that the band conductor's always like, sounds great, even if it doesn't, you know, just because they're desperate to keep you.
They don't want you to quit, exactly.
They don't want you to quit. So, yeah, and then I just, you know, it was my voice, and it's actually something I encourage all people to think about, you know, my kids, which is, you know, that you may have a voice on something that's not the one that you're playing on. And that kind of goes with everything in life, you know, it's like you might just have to keep searching.
How did you get from sounding like a beginner on the oboe to choosing the oboe as your career?
Well, let's see, that's a long path, but, you know, private lessons. So for everyone who's listening, I know that you have a huge following with this podcast. So, but especially the younger, the high school students, you know, make sure you have a great private teacher who supplies you with reeds. You know, that's really what it is. And it's just feeling like you have, you know, an edge to your voice, and by edge, I don't mean sound quality. I mean like a leg up, you know, that you can really do stuff that you want to do. And that means having good reeds. So either ordering reeds that have a reputable quality, or a private teacher. So, and dreams, you guys, it's dreams. Don't give up on your dreams. Just have dreams and go for them.
Yeah, you came from a musical family. So was that something that was expected of you, that you would go into music professionally?
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, and I would say now, my husband is the third horn player in the Toronto Symphony, and you know, we don't really want our kids to go into music, mostly because we know how hard it is, how taxing it is on your self-confidence, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think as a parent, you just want your kids to do what they love. You want to find a passion and go for it. And you don't want to be stuck doing something that, like I was saying, doesn't have your voice, isn't really who you are. And so growing up, my parents started us on instruments, like I said, and we stuck to it. We always had teachers, and so we always had paths to follow, which I think is also important, to have a plan of, little recitals that keep you going, or little bits of motivation. Bribery, is such a huge thing, especially now as an adult. But I think the philosophy with my parents was just to have that part of your brain exercised. And I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be an architect. When I was really young, I wanted to be a grocery store clerk because I loved all things cash registers and Monopoly and all that kind of stuff. But as a middle schooler and a high school student, I really loved architecture, and I still do. But I realized I had something to offer and in music that a lot of my peers in school didn't. And I think it's just because it was part of who I was, and so I decided to pursue that, and here I am.
So once you decided to pursue it, can you talk us through like your training and educational journey post high school, and the kind of thought process that went into that, selecting where you're going to pursue these next steps professionally?
Sure. So I went to the University of Toronto. I grew up in Toronto, and we moved to London, Ontario, which is just outside of Toronto, for my middle school and high school years. And my brother, who plays trumpet now with the Winnipeg Symphony, had gotten into the Interlochen Arts Academy, and just life circumstances, I wasn't able to go the year. I'm a year younger than him, so he went from there to Curtis, and I was super desperate to go and couldn't. So I came back to Toronto to finish high school, because there's the Toronto Symphony Youth Orchestra, which is a phenomenal orchestra, great training orchestra under the umbrella of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. And so I did that program, and I met my future husband. We've been dating since we were teenagers, crazy. And and so I stayed at the University of Toronto because, I got some really good advice, which I think is good for all students to hear, but especially Canadians, or, let's just say students that aren't in America, which is, filled with amazing schools and everything, is that, the fundamentals that you learn, you can get anywhere, and so it's really it's the theory, it's the ear training, it's the great professors that, encourage you along the way with the constructive criticism and all that kind of stuff. It's really important to sort of accept that where it is and where you are. Mm-hmm. And so, there's great schools all over the place, but I think it's really important to be happy where you are and to learn as much where you are, and to find that positivity as, your foundation and your fundamentals. So I went to the University of Toronto, and then for my undergrad and for my grad degree, I went to the New England Conservatory. And I learned so much going to that school. I mean, just even I secretly, don't tell anyone, I chose the school for the practice rooms with the windows. Oh my gosh, like just the most amazing, I'm from downtown Toronto, where like the old houses, right? Oh yeah. So like those windows that open up huge, and like just the air coming in and the oxygen, and while you're practicing, and I just really appreciated the culture there of, waking up early and getting into your practice room at 7 a.m. and just doing your bit to feed your own practice, and your own self-growth was huge for me. Mm-hmm. So, not to mention my fabulous teacher, who, Laura Albeck, she was just incredible. So pairing those two things together, I grew as a person tremendously.
I was at BU when Laura was still alive, and so I got a couple coachings with her. I didn't know her well, but she was a fabulous musician, and yeah, just wonderful.
Yeah, and so great at tapping into each individual student and bringing out the best of them with humor and lightness, but also grit and determination. She was just phenomenal. I'm so grateful to have had the time with her. So
I love your point about not beating yourself up if you don't get into, your number one undergraduate, like I must go here. And then, you have to maybe in your young mind settle for a different school, like really accepting where you are at that point and getting the most out of it and having a growth mindset through that. I think that's super important. That's something that I also had to do when I was a younger student. And I don't think I did it with as much grace as you did. So that's really wonderful.
yeah, and I wouldn't say that I did it with grace either, and that's okay too, right? I think that's like you brought up growth mindset, and a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset is everything in every aspect of your life. And I feel that looking back, my brother and I would have these conversations. He was at Curtis and I was at U of T, and he would say, "Oh, you're so lucky you're at U of T because everyone's so nice there and all this stuff." And I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" But it's just, I think there's something to really, the quicker, this is something I talk about a lot when I'm talking about performance anxiety, which is that the quicker you can acknowledge your feelings, the quicker you can acknowledge where you are and what your needs are, the quicker your needs can be matched and met and developed, right? And so that was I think that's the big thing for undergrad, for everybody, is that it's acknowledging your strengths and acknowledging your challenges. And what are the solutions for you, for your challenges? Not your best friend, not your favorite performer, not the person who sits first chair, for you. And how do we get your challenges met?
Yeah. And that kind of acknowledges the toxicity of the word should. Mm-hmm. I should be able to do this. Why can't I do that? And I don't know. I would always spiral around that. Like, well, I should be able to. Why can't I?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The other important point that I think we need to acknowledge is the compatibility between oboe and horn, because my wife is also a horn player.
It's everywhere. It's everything,
So how many times between the two of you have you played that Reinecke trio?
Well, so many that we, I'm sure you have too, Galit, but we commissioned a couple pieces.
Yeah.
So we could exchange and it's a beautiful piece to play and coach and teach and so.
Okay, Jackie, now you can ask your question.
Can we hear about embarking on your professional journey and how you got to the Toronto Symphony? But I might also like to hear, did you want to go back to Canada, and was that a priority, or was it just kind of serendipity that your hometown orchestra had this fantastic opening? Or by hometown, I don't mean like Toronto's, like I know it's a gigantic orchestra, but like that it's where you're from, and I'm sure it had that special thing.
So that's a really good question, and I really like to think that my journey there is very normal. Everything I've tried to do in my life always points me back to, being humble and accepting who I am and where I am. So when I graduated from NEC, and my husband was playing at the time in the Winnipeg Symphony, so I, for love, he was my boyfriend at the time, but you move and practice, because what else are you going to do? Because you need to practice. Let's face it, you need to practice. So I moved to Winnipeg to be with him, and only a month into being there, I won my first job, which was with the Windsor Symphony, which is just on the other side of the river from Detroit. And boy, that was just such a gift to me right away to win that job. I had no idea what I was doing when I got there to sit in a principal oboe chair. And I had already taken at that point, I think that was my 5th audition at that point, just in the short time between the end of my 2-year master's degree and the September of that year. So, I learned a lot in those first 5 auditions. And I think what I had put together in those first 5 auditions was that I needed to stop trying to be something else and to start, maybe just honing in on the skills that I knew made me nice to listen to. Let's put it that way. So in other words, not trying to force my way through excerpts too quickly and aggressively, and instead trying to find a quality in my playing that could allow me to actually play nicely. And by nicely, I just mean like with ease and beauty. So I had that job for a little while, and I kept taking auditions. And I think one of the great benefits to my partnership with my husband is that Gabe is his name. He is very motivated and very organized in his learning and his practicing. And so I got to kind of just be alongside his journey of learning and kind of use those skills in my own practicing and developing routines. And like I was saying, kind of acknowledging the challenges that I had in my playing that at the time I thought, I was sort of maybe taught that, and not from my oboe teachers, but just from life, that maybe the things that you're not good at, you're just not good at. And it's going to be hard for you to get better at them. And the truth is that's not the case at all, because in my age and stage now, I'm still learning. With every practice session and every week that goes by, I feel like I just get better and better because of maybe the wisdom of letting go in theory, but in practice, really like narrowing in on the actual skill involved. So to keep going, after I was in the Windsor Symphony, then I won a job with the Quebec Symphony. And these are all Canadian orchestras. All of the other auditions that I'm mentioning were in the US. So before I ended up with the Toronto Symphony job, I think that was my 28th audition or 29th audition. So I took many, many auditions in the period of 5 short years. And learned a lot with each one of them. And I think that's the point, is that if you can keep the intensity about growing and about learning and about what you're coming home with, then you're going to do okay in no matter what you do, because that's what they are. Yes, they're huge financial investments, but in the end, there's kind of an end date to people auditioning. People get frustrated and they sort of fall off the audition bandwagon. And I think my theory was that if I could just stay positive and just look forward to having a margarita after the audition and then go home and, cry it out a little bit and journal my head off and figure out what I could do better for the next one, then I was probably going to end up with a chair at some point in some orchestra. And really, I auditioned for principal and second and English horn and associate and everywhere and everything. And I just tried to hone in on what I knew was the voice that I wanted to get across to a committee that would match, who I am.
Yeah.
So from Quebec, I took a 1-year stint in Kitchener, which is just an hour outside of Toronto, because my husband had just got a job in Kitchener and he was coming from Winnipeg to Kitchener, and then he got Toronto and I went to Kitchener, and then, oh my gosh, I won the job in Toronto, and we had been long distance for 8 long years.
Oh my God.
It was just a thing, and we both got jobs in our hometown orchestra. We were both in the TSYO, the youth orchestra. It was really a wonderful thing, but also, it's just important to realize that your path is, it's long and it's curvy. Just do it. Just go there.
Mm-hmm. I want to know about the day. Can you tell us about the day that you won in Toronto?
Sure, except like most auditions, it's pretty rare these days that somebody gets hired, especially for a chair like that, for a principal oboe of a big orchestra, on the day. But so, yeah, that was a pretty awkward, intense morning where you're taking the subway down there because, he was in the orchestra, so I was staying at home, to go down, take the subway. Anytime you can take a subway to an audition, do it. And so, at that point, I had really realized that I needed to get across the qualities that I knew I was the best at. And I don't mean in competition with other people. I mean that these are the qualities that I know I have to offer the world in music. And the qualities that I'm still working on to this day, you just brush them under the rug a little bit. You just try to tidy it up that day. Just keep it nice and tidy. So that means, slowing things down a little bit, easing off the adrenaline rush a little bit, take the pedal off the gas a little bit. Just keep those in check. And I remember just getting to the final round, being shocked that I was in the final round, just like we all are. But instead of losing my bananas the way that everyone does when they get to the final round, which I had done previously 27 times, you get to the finals and you're like, what?
Whoa!
I don't know why you never get used to
I've
that.
done the same thing,
Yeah, and it's something that I try to really coach my students now. It's like, you might get to the finals. So what happens when you do that? And let's talk about, so it's a part of your practice. And I just remember, them asking for my favorite excerpts, one after another, and giving it, just leaving everything on the floor of Roy Thompson Hall. Here you go. Here it is. This is me. This is me. And there was one excerpt that I hadn't really made such a mess of as much in my life. It was the first page of Don Juan. And I just couldn't get it. And they asked for it again and again and again. And I just, for whatever reason, was falling off the train. And I still got offered a contract, and I think that that's a huge, I think that's a huge lesson, because you just don't give up and you refuse to snowball. So if it happens on one excerpt, just keep going and keep giving it and get those yes votes, get them. And so when they did offer me a trial, which then led to a contract, I remember walking out of the stage door and calling my husband and just being like, oh my gosh, like if I have a trial, I know I can win everybody over, because there's so much more to sitting in a chair than just playing the notes and hoping they like them, right? It's about who you are, and it's about what you offer and how you relate to people. And those I knew were skills that I was going to do well with. I feel like when you're sitting in a principal chair of a big orchestra, part of what makes you great is being able to hear other people's ideas and take them into your playing in a split second. And anyway, it all worked out.
Can we ask you about preparation? So maybe this is for audition day or for the actual trial. How do you go about preparing, and is there an extra element when it's like, this is where I'm from, this is my, this job is special to me? Like, obviously, anytime we're going up for something, we want to be successful, but there are also jobs that we have a personal connection to, like you have with TSO. And did that change anything about this gig in retrospect?
Well, I think, in retrospect, if I look back at the time, I was trying to keep everything really simple in my mind. And I think part of that was, don't try to be who you're not. Just be who you are and be great. So, everyone has the capabilities, everyone, absolutely everyone, of being great, of being at their very best. The question is, how can you do that? And for me, it's keeping things clear and simple, and with a very determined goal in mind. And so I think all of it was, the stuff I've already said a lot about, which is allowing yourself to be your authentic self, and allowing the work, the preparation that you've put into it, to take over. And so I knew that if I, and this goes for all the trials that I did, and because, I think, well, actually, well, anyway, 2 out of 4 of those jobs I had trials for. And let's face it, your probation is just one big giant trial. So it was literally like putting one foot in front of the other the whole time. If you can prepare to the best of your ability, and by preparing it means like doing the work that I remember back then was very confusing to me. Get the score, get everyone else's part, get this. What does that mean? Get this, like, so I'd get the score and I'd open it and I think I was studying. I didn't know what I was studying. I think that's right. Part of it, right? Is that a lot of this can be above what you've already taken in your learning. And I think a lot of it in your college degree or in your undergrad degree is it's really above your head, and it takes time to absorb all that information. And that's really what a grad degree is. And then beyond that, and so, you take the score and you're trying to like take it all in. You have no idea what you're doing. So, it's really just getting it to the point of it being rote learning, but putting your own stamp on it, like who you are. Not who your teacher is or who your mentors are or who you wish you could be, but just who you are and sticking to that. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's it. And then just taking literally step by step and not looking too far ahead. Just what your task is in the moment, which is being great right then in that moment with all the preparation you have holding you up.
It sounds like mindfulness, like mindful practicing, mindful performing.
Well, isn't it all... Yeah. It's all the same, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You have to be so attuned to the moment and who you are to be able to put that out there without the big cloud of fear over you. It's so hard to do, and so easy once you can kind of just remember your purpose. So.
Yeah, and our art form exists in a moment. Once we're done playing, it's not there anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such an important perspective.
Yeah.
Was the ability to do that something that came to you organically, or is it something that you had to cultivate actively?
Oh yeah, I think you cultivate it only just by acknowledging that it's something that every human needs. I think organically as a person, I'm a pretty lighthearted, optimistic person. So I always want whatever it is that I'm doing to go as well as it can. I'm not particularly hard on myself, but I am about the result, right? And so I did learn very early on that stress can actually be a giant block in front of you to doing your best. So somehow, whatever it is for your stress management, and there are many, many different ways to look at that, it's going to be something that has to be managed in anything that you do in life, but definitely for the performing arts. So for me, I was doing yoga when I was just graduating from my master's degree. I took up running. My teacher, Laura Albeck, she made me run. It was really, really not comfortable, and I hated it. But I was in Boston with the Boston Marathon. It was super inspiring, and so there was some really important lessons in there. Picking up yoga and running, oxygen in your brain, sweating every day, so important. Just doing something to take care of your body, and then to take care of your mind, just that kind of release that you only get when somebody tells you to take a deep breath, and then you do take a deep breath, and then all of a sudden there's a new perspective. It's just one breath, so there was a lot there that I took into my audition preparation. So I ran before every single audition, at the morning of every audition, just to clear my head and get my body moving and get some oxygen into my brain.
You had briefly mentioned before some commissioning that you've done, and I'd love to hear more about those.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could commission more. I can when I find space in my life. That's always something that I aspire to, and also that I love when my colleagues bring new repertoire for us. But yeah, we had a friend in university who is a composer here in Toronto, or Canada anyway. His name's Eric Ross, and he wrote this. Instead of paying for a big giant wedding, we had a wedding, but we took some of the money that we had set aside for that and commissioned this piece. And
that's adorable.
Well, it's not what you think when you listen to the piece. It's when we told people, oh yeah, we commissioned a piece, inspired by getting married. It's not what you think. So it is intense and fiery and super cool and really difficult for both instruments and for the piano too, actually. But it's a oboe horn piano trio. It's called Chaconne. You can check it out. It's on YouTube, and
amazing.
It's really cool. Yeah, a lot of fun to play.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'd love to transition into some questions about teaching, but first, maybe a bit of like a derpy question, but I still can't help but ask. So like now you're teaching where you went to school and you're playing in the TSO. Like, what was that like to step into that life? Like, was it surreal or was it like so cool or all of the above? Like, what was that moment like where it's like, oh, it's me?
Yeah, it's every day, Jackie, that's what it is. It's every day. It's every day I wake up, I'm like, whoa, I can't believe I'm doing this. So, I've been in the TSO now 17 seasons, and I still feel like I want to so my teacher was the previous principal oboe, and I want to make him proud. And he comes to concerts all the time, and and he sits in the first row of the choir loft, and it's just, I just want to make everybody feel like I'm so part of the team, and I want this for everybody. And so going to teach is interesting because you walk into the building and you're right back there almost every time. So but I also teach at the Glenn Gould School, which is the Royal Conservatory across the way, but it's sort of a different one's a conservatory and the other one's a university. So they're really different. And that's what I love. I really love being in the mindset of the students that you're with. It's a really different thing. So I love teaching. I'm really passionate about being able to pass on any knowledge that you have to everyone else, and helping everyone understand that with the right foundations, in other words, with any foundations, you can do anything, but you have to be yourself first. You have to be true to who you are, which is not something that you really know who you are when you're in undergrad and in your master's degree. It takes time to kind of sit with it and develop, but at least acknowledging where to start and how to build on that is so huge and so important. And I love being a part of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had the benefit of returning home for my job, and teaching where I'm from. And I don't know if it would be for everybody or like even everyone's preference, or even if it is certainly not an option for everybody, but it adds for me like a specialness of like, this is my home and these people this is my community, and I'm in service to not just my art, which is enough, but to also be, able to give back to this community that cultivated everything I've been able to become. It adds a specialness to my career that might be maybe kind of self-centered. I don't mean that in like a flippant way, but it would be all about me. And in this way, I'm able to make it about, where I'm from and my community. And it's about being, I think with anyone in the performing arts, it's about being a part of the fabric of the community, right? Mm-hmm. Without sounding too cliche. It's about like, this is where you came from. This is what inspired you and helped you develop into your best self, and being able to give that back in a way for everyone else is so special. You just put it so beautifully.
And community is really everything about what we do.
Yeah.
If we could go into the oboe nerd weeds for a moment.
So fun. Let's do it. Let's go there.
I would love to hear about your reads. What's your setup? What do you look for in a read? How do you teach reads?
Well,
asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. Yeah, I have questions for you too later. Also asking for a friend, Miss Professor.
Oh.
So, I play on a very American setup. That's a question I get a lot about being a Canadian oboe player. In Canada, teaching in Canada is sort of like, what are the differences between the Canadian? Not really, right? So just putting that out there. So I play, I use a John Furlow, the Harvard double reed gouger. And I also have I have a lot of gougers, you guys. Oh my gosh.
It's my dream.
Yeah.
To have like 20 gougers.
I might be close to that. I don't know. And it's because there are qualities that I love about each of them. They're like children. Oh my goodness. So I have graphs that I've loved, set up by John Seimer that just beautifully set up and so easy, and he's just amazing. And I have many HDR machines that I sort of keep in rotation, just so I always have something great to work with that produces an easy read, so I don't have to stress, it's so. And then if I stick with that for now, rather than telling you about all my gougers, I try to use John Furlow's a similar setup, with little tweaks to for my own physical setup, really. Mm-hmm. But I use a Gilbert One shaper tip, a Mac Pfeiffer. There's some qualities in the Mac Pfeiffer that I just love, depending on the repertoire. Mac Plus Plus was always a favorite of mine for sure. And let's see, what else? I don't know. Staples, like Glotin, Pizzoni,
nice.
Ruby 2 Plus, whatever kind of comes my way that I love. But there's something about, that fine line between a shaper tip that's wide enough to project and feel really fulfilled with your tone, but also your resonance, but then also not so big that you're not really paying attention to the trueness of your high notes above the staff. Mm-hmm. So,
that's going to be a tricky balance, because as a principal oboe of a major orchestra, you've got to project, but it's so much effort to fight the high register if your read is too big. So that's got to be a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, we don't have a particularly friendly hall for the oboe. It's, I listen to all of your podcasts, by the way. And, I hear all of my friends and colleagues say, oh, I love my hall. And I'm like, oh, God. One day I don't know, if somebody comes with a wrecking ball anyway, so won't go there. But, and so it is tricky to find the right setup, and most people play in a hall that there's a little bit of give and take. So I have to play narrow enough in the center of my tone that it projects and gets out there. But I also need to be able to play with ease where I am. And that's really the balance, right? Is being able to find the resonance where you are and know that it's getting out there because of you're paying special attention to the core, the inner core of your sound and the cushions around it. And just taking the feedback however you can, if it's microphones. But that's another really important point for auditions, right? Is that you're going from hall to hall, all the different halls that I played in for auditions, and really trying to hone in on how you play and how you prepared, and not responding, not reacting to the environment that you're in at the moment is really tricky and really important in your preparation. In my opinion.
You mean like not being thrown if the hall is a little more dry or a little more wet? Or
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So one of the things I really try to help my students hone in on is you have to play to the absolute corners of the hall and fill the hall with all the beauty of tone and gestures that you can. But in that, it's right where you are. It's between you and the music stand and all the resonance that you've practiced in your practice room. So not kind of getting stuck in the practice room, just kind of like playing with a small sound, but practicing that resonance in your practice room. And then when you get to the hall, just stay right there. Just do what you did. Fill the hall with your gorgeous beauty, but don't try to push and respond to what's happening.
That's a really great point.
Can we hear about a favorite memory that you have of a past performance?
So, yeah, okay, well, here's one. A few years ago was the first one and only time I got to play La Scala. And, La Scala di Seta by Rossini, not in the hall in La Scala. And, you know, I prepared backwards and forwards and up and down and side to side. I was beside myself in my preparation for that piece. I just wanted to I knew all of the students were going to be there and coming. And I wanted to play Rossini like I had always wanted to. And it's different than playing Italian Algiers or like some of those other things. So my teacher in Boston was like, there was one story that she told me where she was doing conductor auditions, so it must be resident conductor auditions for the Boston Symphony, and one of the pieces to try each conductor was La Scala, and she had to play it over and over and over again that day with all the different conductors who were scared to be conducting, you know, the Boston Symphony. So some of them were unbelievably fast and you know, the strings play it first, and then she said she played it as fast as like 156 and as slow as, you know, 100 that day. And so I took that into my preparation, and I was playing it at every tempo, double-tongued, single-tongued, like in every which way. And, you know, playing with the band, playing with the orchestra, everything is easier. Oh my gosh, you guys, everything is easier. I don't know why that, you know, of course, tombeau is like, so what a pleasure to play tombeau with an orchestra rather than as an excerpt. Mm-hmm. And the best way that any student can emulate that is just by, you know, of course, your teachers have all told you, just turn on the recording and play along, but really crank it, like have a party in the middle of tombeau, like get in there, like swim, you know, get in there. And so La Scala was the same thing, you know, it was so light and fun and effortless and over in a flash. So, you know, these are the little things that even after all these years, I really try to keep in perspective, you know, what a pleasure it is to do what I do. And it's such a privilege.
That sounds really wonderful. And I'm wondering if there is perhaps the other side of a memory, maybe like a funny memory of something that has happened on stage, or perhaps something embarrassing that will make us all feel better about ourselves.
Well, for sure. Like there's the time in my very first year, I didn't have probation, and it's like every oboe player's worst nightmare where you can see the threads start to unravel and you're playing. No. It was Brahms 1.
Oh God.
Yeah, and I saw it, like, I don't know why I noticed they were a little bit, the ends of the thread at the bottom of right by the cork were fuzzy, and, you know, I'd noticed it, but I didn't know, I was just too beside myself to, like, you know, I just wanted to get out there and start to play. Just go. I just wanted to play. So we played the first movement, and we're just taking a break to start the second movement. I took my reed out of the instrument and just to, like, moisten it a little bit and put it back in. And as I put it back in, all of the thread that had unwound then was pushed down, and this is the beginning of the second movement. So, you know, so I go to start and I'm like, just, you know, there's nothing you can do about this. You know, like I always have a few backups on my thing, but I didn't want to change because I hadn't taken care of my business. Like I hadn't made sure that they were wet and tried them out in the first movement. I just was ready to go. And it split second, and I had just that opening. So I chose to play the first solo on that reed, and then it went so well. And I was like, well, I don't really want to change reeds and then have to come in on a high G sharp out of nowhere on a dry reed and then keep going. That's going to be terrible. So I'll keep going. And the thread kept going down and down, and I was trying not to touch it, and it was opening. And though I was sure the blades were going to come apart. And so I went up to the high C sharp and came down and finished the solo. The clarinet took over, and I pulled the reed out, and the blades came off.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So, at that point I had a second to kind of just soak up a couple of the other reeds that I had out. And oh my gosh, but I sweat just thinking about that. But it's all, those moments, right?
I was getting anxiety. I felt my adrenaline coursing through my veins as you were telling that story.
Yeah, because you just don't notice, and you can get neurotic about checking all the little details and stuff. And normally, especially since moments like that, and there have been other moments like that, but not specifically like that with the reed, but other moments where you didn't notice that something was out of adjustment, and then all of a sudden nothing's coming out of your instrument, and you're checking, and anyway. So that we're neurotic. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right.
I feel like we're neurotic because we've been taught to be that way because things like this happen.
Yeah. Well, and so, it's a really good question. I don't tell those stories very often because I feel like in a lot of ways it's just a fluke, and it's sort of how you respond to it. It's sort of like just laughing it off and being like, it's just a moment. It's okay. It's okay. Nobody died. It's okay.
Yeah. That's true. So. Yeah, that's true.
Anyway.
So the question that we love to end on is, what advice do you have for a young musician who aspires to have a career like yours?
Be yourself, but know yourself. Know your strengths and love your strengths and own your strengths. Also, understand your challenges and be okay with your challenges and find solutions for your challenges. So this is the case for every musician you have ever heard of that has ever been a legend in the world. We're human. We're all human. We're all the same. We have a different set of strengths and challenges. And it's so important to be okay with that and then to get to work and find solutions for your challenges. And there are different ways of coming at every challenge. And there is a teacher out there who can help you embrace those challenges. And if you can do that and you can find the fun in all of it, the fun in your fundamentals, as I tell my students, it's so important to have great fundamentals and a great foundation for your playing. And then, oh my gosh, you can let go and soar. And if you can stay true to that through all of it, through all the constructive criticism that sometimes doesn't feel great, but can be so empowering for your path, for your learning experience. If you can stay true to all of that, you're going to do really well, because people get bogged down. They get bogged down in the things they can't do, or the things they should be able to do, or where they should be going to school, or where they should have a job by the time they're whatever X age. None of that matters. What matters is that you're honing in on your craft, that you're constantly getting better at it, and that you're finding your voice and really truly zeroing in on what makes you you.
Sarah Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us for this hour on Double Reed Dish. It was so inspiring and wonderful, and we can't thank you enough.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, we hope you enjoyed that interview. That was lovely. Thank you for your questions. And don't forget to follow us on social media. Please rate and review. We do notice, and it means so much to us when you take that time. Check in with us on social media. We always love hearing from y'all. And on the next episode, Galit's going to tell you who's chatting with us.
We spoke to Chris Wiett, Professor Emeritus of Bassoon at Ohio State University. Jackie, let's end this nerd parade.
Go make reeds.
And take a nap.